Am I? Okay, yep, I think you can hear me. Glad to be here today with you, and looking forward to the next few days as well. Very excited to be able to be a part of this digital age, this digital transformation. You've heard a lot about the different components associated with digital transformation, and there could be some confusion. There's a lot of recommendations, a lot of notions, hypotheses that kind of stir around the marketplace today. I've spoken to many customers like yourself. Verizon has one of the one of the largest global operations on the globe. We have to go through this as well. We have been going through our own level of digital transformation for years. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. The things that I'm going to share with you are really founded upon some of our own experiences as well, right? And so it's a very exciting time to be in the marketplace. As I speak, though, let me just kind of share a few anecdotes and a few stories, because that'll kind of set up everything that's kind of underneath. So everyone, I'm willing to bet, has purchased something from Amazon, perhaps in this last week, maybe yesterday, perhaps in this last month, but definitely within the last year. If you're part of my household, I see an Amazon logo in front of my doorstep every single week. And this one-click purchase option, it's killing me, because I don't do it, but the rest of my family does. But it's very convenient nonetheless. And have you ever wondered why you can always make a transaction with Amazon? They are always able to take your money. Have you ever thought about that for a minute? They've never, ever not been able to take your money. You've always been able to make a transaction. So just imagine with me for just a minute. What if you could actually have that experience in procuring network services? You think that's possible? It is possible. I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit today. So imagine another scenario. Okay, you are responsible for your corporate IT, or you're associated with it in some form or fashion. Security underpins everything these days. Cyber is it is a board-level discussion. So now imagine a scenario where you are having to deal with a DDoS attack. So I'm willing to bet that in order for you to mitigate a DDoS attack, it probably takes you hours for a variety of reasons. Number one, with the proliferation of applications and devices, mobile devices, the threat vector has increased exponentially. All right. So what do you have to do? You have to figure out, man, how do you kind of identify where this stuff's coming from? That's the nature of DDoS, right? That's what makes it so complex. The more devices, the more threat vectors, the more points of entry. All right. So what's the typical thing that you have to do? You basically have to shut down your interface. Okay, what does that mean? You lose operations. What if I told you that you could have an environment where, you know what, I know what those attributes look like. I know what they look like. So as soon as I start seeing those attributes, then I have automated policies that say, you know what, I am going to shut down my interface, but that interface is virtual, not physical, and I'm going to spin up another container so that now operations can continue while we continue to remediate. All right? That happens in seconds. Would that be meaningful to you? Let me throw another situation. Imagine this. You're in a finance firm. Okay? You have a broker. I've spoken to many finance customers, and many of them, the brokerage part of the business, a very large revenue part of the business. And there are a lot of transactions that you must have insight to. So imagine you're a broker. 70% of the time you spend doing research for your client base. 70% you do research. And then there's 30% of the time where you are actually making transactions that are revenue generating for the firm. Well, guess what? Typically both of those activities, you're using common pipes, common network, common whatever, cloud platforms, okay? What if I told you that I could identify with that single user when they're doing just kind of public research traffic versus when they're doing a transaction? And I can, when they hit a transaction button, I can give assurances that that transaction will take place because that data path will be prioritized. Is that possible? possible. It's possible. Okay? Now, today, you might say, okay, traditional means of doing that, I'll put QoS policies in the network and those kind of things. What if I told you I can actually make those decisions dynamically? All right? Now that changes the game. So how is all this done? This is done because you have to reimagine what the network actually does. All right? And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that means. Now, let me just kind of level set. The pace of change is exploding. It's not just accelerating, it's exploding. Just to put it in perspective, okay, to get to 50 million users, this visual kind of is very self-explanatory, all right? 38 years ago, it took 38 years to get 50 million users on the radio. To put it quickly, I'm going to fast forward here for time purposes. Pokemon Go, 19 days. 19 days. That is phenomenally disruptive. Why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because this has put massive pressures on providers like Verizon, okay, to also innovate. Okay, let me also share another statistic from a digital transformation perspective. There is research that suggests that 50% of the S&P companies on the S&P 500 will no longer be on the S&P 500 in the next 10 years. All right, why is that? It's because of this digital transformation paradigm. If you cannot move quickly, if you cannot adapt quickly, if you cannot bring services to bear quickly, the digital age has enabled smaller, competitive firms, smaller, to enter into markets much more quickly than they ever have before. So Verizon kind of has a unique blend, right? We also have huge retail outlets. Okay, we're a huge retailer. Those arms and businesses have to innovate. We're a huge global operations. We have to innovate. We saw 5G coming years ago. We started the virtualization track years before anyone else. So we've kind of grown through and taken lots of learnings through this process, much like all of you have to do and perhaps are even doing today. But what it means from a CSP, from a communication service provider, that's not cloud service provider, but communication service provider, is we also see the need for you, the enterprise base, to be able to consume services on demand. So this is the paradigm shift that the cloud environment entered, or really affected in the marketplace. You started with virtual compute environments, on-demand-based commercial models, okay? Now the network and the cloud environments have converged, right? And there is an expectation that network services ought to be consumed much like cloud services. How do you do that, okay? Hybrid WAN now becomes the new norm. I'm willing to bet also that most, if not all of you, you have to make some technology decisions from a connectivity perspective. And let me just guess what you're probably thinking about. Maybe you have some kind of MPLS environment today, and you're thinking, you know what, I need to implement some cost control measures here. I can get broadband, high bandwidth, really cheap, okay? And I'm going to put SD-WAN on top, and I'm good. Does that resonate? Are you hearing that? Okay. Let me just tell you this. Yes, you can do that, okay? There's this false impression in the marketplace that SD-WAN is a replacement for MPLS technologies. That is false, okay? I'm going to be very definitive. It's a false statement if you understand the technologies, okay? The point is hybrid WAN is the new norm. You know, it's not one or the other. There are applications that require different connectivity environments. How do you integrate those then becomes the question. We have customers, as an example, who made the bet on cheap broadband. They're coming back to us saying, that didn't work. You know, we need to reassess kind of how we've architected this. Okay? Now, the other dimension to this, and I think this gets to part of the heart of digital transformation. You've heard this theme in all the speakers this evening, and the implication is this. You really need to start thinking about moving from the physical domain to the virtual domain. It's the only way you're really going to be able to create an environment by which you can be very agile. Now, That is a very macro principle. It's not easily done. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that's accomplished, but you need to start thinking that way, all right? Zero touch in experience, zero touch now becomes paramount. You remember the imagine the scenario I talked about? If you could consume network services much like an Amazon experience, zero touch becomes kind of part of that paradigm as well. All right? What it does then is we need to kind of evaluate how we're offering services as well. Okay? Everything you've heard from the speakers today, they're spot on, right? They're hitting on all the key points here, right? There's a ton of data out there. How do you leverage that data? And how do you consume it, as firms, as global enterprises, such that it's meaningful for your particular business outcomes, all right? Again, how do you move from that physical domain to the virtual, right? It's not as necessarily easy as it sounds. IoT is huge here, especially when you think about 5G. The possibilities are, some of them, we just know intellectually that the possibilities are enormous. There are use cases that we haven't even determined yet, all right? This is a massive opportunity, a massive marketplace from an IoT perspective. And with that becomes, again, security considerations, massive security considerations. What we have found is that security has to underpin everything we do, all right? And it has to underpin everything you do. You've told us that, right? Going back to moving from the physical to the virtual, the SDN environment, this represents a major paradigm shift in the marketplace today, all right? It's kind of exciting to be part of the network again. There was a period of time where you kind of moved from TDM to IP, and now we're moving from IP to as a service, okay, on the network side. This is another major tectonic shift, in the industry today. And SD-based technologies, VNF technologies, are really central to that. So, what are the implications then at a pure IT level? Now, this is not intending to kind of go through a history lesson here, only to make a point that there are certain parts in IT evolution, that have certain milestones, okay? Back from 2003 to 2010 as an example, the networks were private, okay? You had IP-based, Mpls-based WANs, point-to-point, layer 2 connectivity. The central focus was really on brick and mortar headquarters, remote locations, enabling those locations to communicate. The key technologies were IP enabled. VoIP was really on the rise, not necessarily, even in the majority of adoption phases there. Then we have this shift to where we are today, 2010 to 2020, on e-commerce. The internet, not just like public internet connectivity, but the internet, e-commerce has really changed the game on how we consume services. It's also, we've seen this a reimagination on how services can actually be consumed. We see it in front of our face. I used one of them today, Uber, okay? Uber, one of the largest fleet firms out there, they own no cars. Alibaba, one of the largest, I heard a report in a very short sales cycle. They're running some promotions, eclipsed $20 billion in less than a week sales, okay? They don't have any inventory. So they've mastered supply chain. They've also mastered what do their customers want. I'll give you an example with Alibaba. They know that their constituents, they like to bargain. That's in their nature. So that's what they instituted in their platform. So they get a lot of volume out of that, right? These are things that are now reimagined. E-commerce has really set the stage there. And then where we're headed is the industrialization, IoT, the fourth industrial revolution, as you've heard Lowell McAdams and others say, with IoT. And 5G is really going to underpin that. All right, so here's the substance of kind of the reimagine. How do you then reimagine your network so that you can drive meaningful outcomes for your business? How do you reimagine your network so that now you can have enabled services that are very agile, so that you can start consuming services through the network much like you do through the cloud today. All right? It's because it's through platforms. The role of the CIO, many of you are in here, so you know this, and many of whom I've spoken with, continues to change. It's no longer, I'm going to install a technology and make sure that it's up. No, the CIO is more commonly working with the CMO and line of business unit leaders, as well as in front of the board, to deliver services that really drive meaningful outcomes for the firm. Well, how do you do that? You're not going to do that by just deploying point services these days, right? You got to deliver services based on a platform. So what Verizon has done, this is our point of view, is we've developed an architecture. We've made the network, we believe that the network should be programmable, all right? It should be programmable. I don't care if you're deploying Ethernet services or MPLS services or public internet or broadband. It doesn't matter to me, you know? But the network should be programmable. What do I mean by that? You should be able to consume services that you're used to today, security services, routing services, optimization services, SD services through the network as much like you do through the cloud today with other cloud-based services. All right? That happens because now you've got to establish a platform that is API-driven, all right? And then the way you get to that Amazon experience is now you got to reimagine the architectures underneath, okay? So APIs are great. They provide a lot of flexibility, but APIs are they're a thing of the past. We need them. We're seeing now more of an adoption, at least for us, in what we're doing internally as well, to more of an event bus, pub sub, API, data lake-driven environment. It's one of the reasons we'll be able to deliver Amazon-based services, Amazon-like services. You're always able to make a transaction. Always able to make a transaction, right? And again, it also enables the introduction of a partner ecosystem, okay? So onboarding partners then becomes much more templated, right? Faster. All right, so again, you can see the opportunities become endless here, right? So it's not just your traditional provider offering you telco-based services. We've cloudified the telco, okay, and expanded the partner ecosystem. And then lastly, it's the application insights. Okay, so today, just from a pure network perspective, you all can go in and you could look at a location and configure a router or a switch. You can employ QoS policies. You can deploy services around NBAR and have other application insights, app dynamics or whatever, that'll tell you with some level of detail as to what you're doing. But what about really understanding, okay, at a transaction level, whether an application that you need that's meaningful to the business from a revenue perspective actually is being transacted? And then how do you funnel that back into your overall experience? Again, the finance example I gave you earlier, so that now you can start making dynamic policy decisions for your environment, right? That's a game changer. That happens through a platform. And so we believe, and we've taken a point of view that the platform must be open. It can't be closed, all right? And it's the best way to be able to create an open API set. It's the best way to be able to onboard partners into the ecosystem. It's the best way to expand a robust marketplace up and down the stack. We partner with many of you, many of the companies that are keynotes here, all right? And we continue to build that library of microservices within the environment, all right? And within that platform then becomes this whole element of machine learning, artificial intelligence. Remember the DDoS example I gave you? That happens because you have a closed-loop environment to understand attributes to make automated decisions that otherwise are made by humans. Now, this expands the use cases, especially in the 5G paradigm with IoT as well. It happens through a robust platform that's self-healing, self-optimizing, and self-defending. All right? So this is kind of how we see the world, right, in terms of just the SDN and VNF-based technologies, and how the services then become deployed to enterprise like yourself. And by the way, we've taken the learnings from 5G in virtualizing our own network. We're doing it the same way in our own retail stores to leverage technology in order to get from the physical to the virtual domains, okay? And again, you need that end-to-end visibility from your applications perspective. Today, commonly, when I speak to many of our customers like you as well, and some of the larger firms are a little bit more sophisticated, and some are heading there, some others are headed there, in terms of the application insights, end-to-end, from mobile to end device to cloud, all right? That then becomes paradigm here in terms of just making real-time decisions. You heard some notions of real-time enterprise, right? This becomes part of that paradigm. Let me just talk a little bit about 5G and its implications as well. So this is the hot topic right now, 5G. There's still a lot to do with 5G, but in order to really start realizing the promise of 5G, it starts with the underlying operations, platforms, the architectures. We made a bet more than 5 years ago. We saw this coming. And we started making our own investments internally to virtualize our own operating environment in advance of this. Okay, so you hear terms like multi-access edge computing, real-time enterprise, right? So some of these things are still evolving in a 5G perspective. Some of them are here, like I just shared with you, from an enterprise network perspective. Some of them are here already, right? Well, how do you get to real-time enterprise? You got to start by getting out of the physical world, okay? So what does it mean? What it means is, like I just said, there's this evolution. You're going to move from physical to virtual, and then what happens is a lot of the decisions become accessible at the edge of the network. Think about this for just a minute as well. The cloud, so the cloud environment, the public cloud environment used to kind of be this, it's an external node on a network or within a business. The cloud environments now are subsumed within your enterprise. Think about that. They're actually almost edge nodes in some cases, right? Multi-edge compute will be the same thing. We've actually done tests, so you're going to hear terms come in like network slicing, these elements as well, where you're going to get the maximum performance when decisions can be made at the edge of the network, okay? So that's where this evolution will continue to evolve to, right? And then we see some real drivers in all of the segments, but especially in some markets like retail, manufacturing, and healthcare. And I think I already talked. Ooh, how do I go back? The red button. Okay. And like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done here, but also one of the takeaways here is just the end-to-end security aspect as well, right? Because this, again, the explosion of the threat vectors, because everything becomes IP enabled in this paradigm, becomes quite massive. Well, how do you deal with that? All right. So it's much more than just instituting a firewall policy. This now becomes a broader cyber discussion. All right. And so again, very exciting to kind of see where the market's heading and the applications and the possibilities for 5G. We talked about them at a macro level: AR, ML, extensions of AR as well, AI capabilities, all exist within this particular paradigm. All right. And so again, 5G, massive opportunity from an enterprise perspective. This is what our customers have shared with us. So we actually just hosted a CIO forum out west, and they're telling us, that they really want to see these three things. They want insights into all the data, right? They want operational control as well, end-to-end, mobile to cloud. And they want customer insights. This is another interesting element, tied to the real-time enterprise. It's the access to customer information in real time because the technology enables it to do so. Think about it: high bandwidth, low latency. All right. And from a network transformation perspective, this kind of takes us back to, again, instituting a software-defined virtual environment where now the network becomes very dynamic, and the decisions that are made are based on what it learns from certain behaviors within your own domain. Okay, so we actually have seen these use cases come to life, and we've instituted use cases just like this as well, and continue to take some of that feedback within the customer base to really kind of make some of those continuous improvements within the platform in itself. So from a retail perspective, again, just another use case, where we see the agility, the transformation and innovation, even within our own retail outlets. We continue to kind of see that the platform becomes very central to really being able to deploy those services quickly with new commercial models. So this is important as well, being able to kind of shift from CapEx to OpEx, so perpetual license to on-demand usage-based commercial models within your domain, all right? So what are then some of the key takeaways? One is, I think this is obvious, digital transformation has completely changed the rules of the game. We see that right before us, where, again, half the S&P 500, they won't be there in the next 10 years, okay? That's disruptive. Agility is a must, all right? Don't think of the network as the traditional network. Don't think of the network as just, I can get bandwidth at a high bandwidth at a low cost. Okay, think of it as a platform to be able to consume services or applications as a service. And innovation, innovation, innovation. The question to ask yourself is, are you then, in this digital transformation world, are you set up to innovate and not see your investment stranded, right? That requires platforms that are very robust and agile, all right, not static. Again, physical to virtual, all right? So I think actually I'm a little bit over time, so I apologize, but I think we had some time before business, before dinner, which was at 7, and I think I'm at 6:45. My clock is right.
You got plenty of time, too.
Okay, all right. Any questions?
Yes. Could I ask you to say your name and company, please?
Hi, Mike Klimkowski from Bethesda out of Wisconsin. My question is, when do you believe 5G will be here and when it will have critical impact?
Right, so 5G's here. We are deploying 5G services in 4 markets, Houston, LA, Sacramento, and Indianapolis, on the consumer side. So we're selling it as broadband services. You'll start to see more enterprise use cases come out into next year, okay? And some of the use cases we could imagine are around access, right? So I'll give you an example. Today, we even see firms that are using 4G as a backup. See that quite a bit, actually. There is notion that because of the speeds of 5G that, and we've heard from customers that some may even adopt them as a primary. So now you completely eliminate backhaul events, trenching events that take out whatever provider services you have through a conduit, in the ground. So we'll start to see more enterprise capabilities come out through the balance of next year and beyond.
Any other questions? Yes, excuse me.
Hi, Noli with FIS. In your analogy at the beginning, you compare network services to like delivery in Amazon. But over the years, the speed, your just-in-time delivery to be able to provide Mpls networks, essentially I haven't seen it really improve. It's more or less the same 6 to 8 week delivery time and a lot of interdependencies. Has there been any consideration to be able to, like an Amazon model, to provide more just-in-time deliveries where there's not these extended delays in delivering services?
Right. So that's a really good question, actually. And here's how we should think about this. There are certain operational elements that you can't avoid, right? So you can't avoid if a circuit's not an actual twisted pair or a fiber circuit. If it's not there, you got to go put it there, right? But think about the services that are on top, right? So let me just give you an analogy. I spoke to a large global oil firm about a month ago. They said, Danny, we're expanding internationally, and we have a very aggressive time frame. And I need to somehow condense my time frame for installs. And I asked them, well, okay, what are some of your challenges? They said, well, one of my challenges is I have to work with 4 different vendors for every location, 4 vendors. So my contracting cycle is quite long. And then within those 4 vendors, I have different engineering work streams. I have to engineer my security, my routing, my WAN opt, and they're looking at SD as well. So now my engineering cycle is long, okay? How do I condense that time frame, okay? I asked them, well, what if I told you I could condense it by 50%? So I'd take 4 of the applications, at least 50%. I can combine and virtualize all 4 of them, actually. So it's more than 50%. I can help them. I said, what if I said I can give you 1 contract? And you can procure all of those services from me, from a single partner, and you don't have to over-engineer your licenses. You may have peaks in demand where you need certain micro features, and you can consume those when you need them and pay for only what you use when you need them. So now you're contracting with 1 provider. Would that help you? Absolutely, they said yes. What if I said now you can address your engineering design considerations with 1 provider also? Because we can bring all those skill sets to bear for you. Would that help? Do you think that would help save you time? Absolutely. All right, so it's not just about putting the circuit in anymore, right? It's elevating the discussion to also deploy services. So think about this for just a minute. Now I can start deploying services 50% faster than they never had before, because it's not just about plugging in or trenching a fiber pair, right? It's also about deploying applications. It's also about the procurement cycle. It's also about the engineering cycle, and then deploying the applications as a part of that. Does that make sense?
A lot of the cycles that you mentioned have maturity in a lot of companies because they can have individual control of those processes. But still, the last mile, the installation circuit, it's one of those, you just kind of raise your hand and say, it's in when it's in.
That's right. Those are some practical realities in life, like taxes. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? If someone figures that out, we're going to be the first there. But you're right. I mean, there are certain practical realities you're not going to get around, right? And that's the physical nature of again putting networks in. Now I can tell you, once they're in, and by the way, like there should be a model where I don't care who you procure your network from. These are over-the-top models. That's kind of the position we've taken.
Hey, Danny. Harvey Gandy, Health Network Labs. Question I had for you in the beginning, you started off by talking about some of the pitfalls of SD-WAN. So obviously, SD-WAN promises everything that you said: security, IPS, IDS, firewall, and AI somewhat based, cloud control.
Yeah.
So what's the pitfall? What's the flaw? Is it not implementing it right? Not taking into account certain functions that SD-WAN doesn't deliver, this platform that you talked about?
Right. So let me just clarify one thing. The comment I made earlier was, and then I'll circle back to the SDN broadly, was tied to SD-WAN, right? So an SD-WAN technology coupled with, the notion that SD-WAN technology coupled with just go buy your cheapest high bandwidth broadband, is also all of a sudden going to be just as robust as any network that you have out there like MPLS, okay? That notion is patently false. I'm just going to be very provocative. It's patently false. And the reason why is because, you have to understand what SD-WAN does. SD-WAN does 2 main things. One is it separates the control plane. That's a bit of the technical element. But what that really means is the network is treated as a black box, okay? So you can institute broad policy control faster than you ever have before. So I don't now have to go hands on a keyboard to change a configuration at all of my 100 sites. I can institute application-based policies and push them out everywhere, all right? Benefit number 1. Benefit number 2 is, this is how it's enabled, it creates fully meshed connectivity across hybrid networks, networks, okay? It does it at layer 3, okay? They're essentially IPsec VPNs. That's the secure part of SD-WAN, okay? So think about it, and this is by the way, that's nothing new. I mean, we've had that for years and years and years, okay? All the major vendors supported IPsec VPNs back in the early 2000s, all right? It leverages that capability, all right? Now, I explain it this way from an SD-WAN perspective. Everyone's here is probably familiar with Google Maps or Waze, the application, right? And when you use Waze, it says, okay, I'm going to use your current location and you want to get to a destination. It defaults to, I'm going to get you from A to B in the fastest route possible, right? And so it doesn't care who built the roads. I mean, it'll send you across states. It doesn't care, right? It just says, I'm going to, and a lot of it's crowdsourced in terms of the information, so it learns. I'm going to get you from A to B in the quickest route. Now, you can change the policy. You can say, well, hold on a second. I don't want you to take me on a route that has tolls, major highways, or whatever, okay? So it'll modify based on the policies that you institute. That's SD-WAN. Here's what SD-WAN, this is why I say it's patently false in terms of SD-WAN plus broadband is your solution to everything, is SD-WAN cannot control the constitution of a road. If you go down a road that is got a ton of potholes, your experience is going to be horrible. Flat out, plain and simple. SD-WAN can't control that. Okay? It doesn't. It may give you some information if others have put it in there, but it cannot control the underlying infrastructure. It has no influence over that. Right? So that's why you need to understand what kind of experience, the question asked is what kind of experience do you want first, okay? You may have, as an example, applications where, you know, it can handle some bumpiness, it can take the long route, doesn't matter. You may have applications that, you know what, they're critical to my business. I must have assurances that they always get to where they need to go, the fastest route possible with the quality and the customer experience I need. Well, you need to then, again, going back to hybrid WAN is kind of the new norm, you need to institute an architecture then that kind of takes all that into consideration. What that means is you're going to be looking at a variety of connectivity types. Okay, so that's SD-WAN. That was, I just want to clarify that. From an overall SDN perspective, yes, some of the pitfalls to keep in mind is the promise of SDN is everything as you shared. The challenge is how do you actually pull this off, right? So this is where it's become very complex, right? It's not as easy as one just thinks. The key is you need to have an orchestrated platform, right? You need to have an orchestrated platform that is able to onboard a variety of partners, that is able to kind of have a closed loop service assurance enablement, that is able to take virtualized functions and bundle them and deploy them as a bundle, automated service chains. That's the promise of SDN. Now, that just doesn't happen, okay? Because now your deployment models could be either in the cloud or at a virtualized edge, okay? And you're now looking at bare metal, again, physical, to a virtualized environment, whether that's a virtual CPE or hosted within the network cloud, okay? Now, how do you pull that one off? Okay, that's difficult. So that's why, again, the pressures that are on the communication service providers to certify that up front. That's why the operating environment and the back end, you know, the investments need to be made in order for that certification and benchmarking and bundling can take place. Does that make sense? And I'm happy to talk to you more about that, you know, but that's where, you know, you kind of buy the message that, oh, I don't know, this is all easy, and then you try to do it yourself, and you're like, that's not so easy, okay? So there's the kind of that, how do you do that? It's in the platform operating model. It's a really good question. Any other questions?